everyone. This is Kimberlyn Baffy with Hugh's Blue World. I'm here today in New York City, in East Manhattan. I'm at the wonderful Remedy Diner, a very classic American diner here, and I've got some exciting guests that I would like to interview and introduce to you. Mwah. So today I have someone really special. It screams out New York. I have Michael Kannisto, and one of the things that we love in New York is the fashion scene. So Michael, tell us about 3 things that influence you to go into fashion design.
Well, I started my career off as a research scientist, so I like to know how things happen, where things come from. And I think fashion has an appeal to me because if I see something I like or I have an idea, I love the idea of kind of working backwards and trying to understand how would I make a piece, what would I have to do in the right order or in what sequence in order to make something look like the way I want it to look. So I think it appeals to the creative, sciencey part of me.
Oh, very good. So you're merging science together with the arts. That is so exciting. So, what key events happened that led you into this pathway of designing your own line of clothing?
Sure. Well, I do, by day, I'm in the corporate world, and a few years ago, I ended up working for a fashion company. And I didn't really have any background in fashion and didn't really know much about it, and I was sort of lamenting that fact. Well, I think I do my job pretty well. But here I am working for a fashion company, and I don't really know much about fashion. And one of the interns in the office said, you are in New York City, fashion capital of the world. Why don't you walk yourself down the street and go take a sewing class? And that's exactly what I did. So I signed up. I went down the street to sign up for a sewing class, made a tote bag, which I enjoyed, but I didn't really understand. That taught me how to sew. But it really didn't teach me about where fashion came from or how it all came together. So then I took a fashion design class, and then I took a draping class, and then I did pattern making, and little by little it began to make sense to me. And of course, over time I began to think about things that I liked or looked at clothes in a different way, like, I wonder if I could use that idea. I wonder if I could use that theme to make something that I like. And little by little I just did it more and more and more, and now here I am sort of spending a lot of my time designing, pattern making, sketching, and making clothes.
Tell me, I know I've seen some of your amazing fashions. What are some influences that make your designs unique? What influences do you draw from?
Sure, I think the one that's most obvious that people notice or that I think about is a lot of it is post-war Japan fashion as influenced by Western culture. It was kind of an interesting time in Japan in that era, and the mix of the old and the mix of the new was always intriguing to me. I think I remember running across a photograph when I was in fashion design class. I was flipping through a book, and I ran across a photograph, and there are many of them like that in post-war Japan. 2 women stopping on the sidewalk having a conversation. One's in a kimono, and one's in sort of a Western-style miniskirt. And those 2 aesthetics lived side by side for quite a while.
The contrast between a kimono and a Western-style outfit.
Right. So the notion of these 2 very distinct styles coexisting was really intriguing to me. And you could see the Western styles influencing the traditional kimono, and you could see the kimono, the fabrics, the handcrafted way that people constructed kimono began to have an influence on the modern fashions. And I just found so much inspiration in that era. I didn't decide to stay there, but I've been there all along, and it's been continuing to be an influence on the work that I admire and that inspires me.
That's really profound, because now you're talking not just about science and connection with the arts and fashion, but you're also talking about historical context and cultural influences that dominate our world stage. And your work and your interest in another culture actually brings to mind the situation that we have in our world today, right? That if we continue to be separate worlds and do not consider one another's cultures, we're going to be more and more distant from one another. So my final question for you is, we've talked a lot about your science background, how you draw in the arts, and now we've talked about history and cultural influences and how that was, seminal in the way we can shape this world. What do you feel is the one perspective that will change, that fashion can change the world?
I think I used to think of fashion mainly as a business or as advertising or individuals who had a particular style that people liked or didn't like. Now I've kind of come around to the idea that fashion is about the way people feel. If you see something that reminds you of something your mother used to wear, or when you see pictures of relatives that you've never met who are in old photographs and you kind of see that the way they're dressed differently than you dress today, it evokes feelings. And I think that's the piece that's probably most relevant is, again, rather than looking at the differences of, what citizenship you have or what part of the world you live in. We all like to feel good, and a lot of warm feelings are associated with people who wore certain clothes. And it's just kind of a nice way of thinking about what fashion can mean for creating just a sense of shared pleasure.
Excellent. Now, I have one more thing that I would like you to say to our friends around the world. What is one last thought that you would like to challenge someone who is thinking about being creative, or someone that might want to consider exploring fashion design?
I can definitely speak from the heart on this one. I was the most unfashionable person that most people had ever met. And I think when people who sort of knew me before I discovered all this sort of say, I'm sorry, what did you say? You're interested in fashion? It's kind of a surprise to them. I'm not very good at it. I have so much more to learn, but it gives me a lot of joy and a lot of pleasure. It's super accessible, and anyone can use fashion, whether it's combining clothes that you already own, or accessorizing, or just thinking about changing your wardrobe up entirely. It's just a way of feeling really, really good, and it's super accessible and really easy to do.
Michael Kannisto, thank you so much for this interview. I want to say something about knowing this amazing designer and artist. When I first met him, he told me about who he wanted to design for, the everyday person. So it's not the super thin Vogue model. He wants us to feel beautiful, those of us of all different sizes and all different looks and walks of life. And that's what made a difference in this to this person, this interviewer. So bravo to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.